Hey everyone, in this video we are going to look at how to build a factorial finder using Python. We'll be using VS Code and we'll calculate the factorial of a number in two ways. First one by using a loop and second one by using recursion. And we'll also let the users choose the method they prefer and we'll allow them to try again as many times as they want. Before we get started, first let's look at what a loop and recursion is. So a loop represents a block of code again and again until a condition is met. So imagine you telling to the computer, keep doing this until I say stop. And recursion is when a function calls itself to solve a smaller part of the problem. So imagine telling this to your computer, I'll solve this by breaking into smaller problems. Okay, now let's start. So first we'll be creating a folder, name it something like factorial. And then you have to right click on it and you have to create a new file in the folder which we just created, and you have to name it as factorial.py, which stands for Python. Let's look at the code line by line. We'll start with loop function. So the first line, which is factorial underscore loop, this line defines a function named factorial loop that takes a number n as an input. Result equals 1. This is when we have to initiate a variable result to 1. This is where we'll be storing the running factorial result. And then comes our loop logic, which multiplies the result by every number from 1 to n. And then return result. This return statement gives back the final factorial value. Now let's move to our second function. This line starts a recursive function and called factorial underscore recursive. It also takes one input, which is n. Here we define our base case. If the number is 0 or 1, the factorial is 1 and we return it. And then return n into factorial underscore recursive n minus 1. This is the recursive part. We call the same function again, but this time with n minus 1. And multiply it with n. This keeps going until it reaches the base case. Now we'll be looking at the main program. While true. We start a while loop that runs forever until the user decides to quit. Try. We use a try block to catch any unexpected errors during execution. Now we are importing the sys module or sys module, which stands for system. Then we use sys.stdin flush to clear the standard input buffer. This helps avoid any leftover input causing issues. And coming to our next line, which is number input. Now we ask the user to enter a number. .strip is used to clean out any extra spaces. And then we check if the input is digit. If not, we print an error message and go back to the beginning of the loop. Then we convert the input to an integer and check if it's negative. If yes, we show a warning and we restart the loop. While true. This is another loop where we ask the user to pick between loop and recursion methods. So the first one being loop and second one being recursion. And method equals input, enter your choice 1 or 2. .strip. We print both options, which is loop or recursion, and then get the user's choice. Now we are using an if statement. If the user picks 1, we call the loop function and show the result. Then we break out of this inner loop. But if the user picks 2, we call the recursive function and show the result. So for this, we are using an elif statement. And then we are going to write an else statement, because if the user types anything else, we show a warning and loop again by using this statement and by letting them know that it's an invalid choice. Now we are using a try except block in case if anything crashes inside the try block. This catches the error and shows it nicely. And coming to our next block, which is again equals input, if again not n. Finally, here we ask the user if they want to continue, and if they say no, we end the loop and say thank you. Now let's recap the logic behind the Python program. First, we have two functions, one for calculating the factorial using a loop and one for using recursion. So let's look at the loop logic. In the factorial_loop function, the idea is simple. Start with a variable called result, set to 1, and then run a loop from 1 to n. This builds the factorial step by step. For example, if n is in 4, it does 1 into 2 into 3 into 4, which gives us 24. Now let's talk about the recursion logic. In the factorial_recursive function, we use a different concept. It keeps calling itself with a smaller number until it hits the base case. And the base case is when the number is 0 or 1, where it simply returns 1. Otherwise, it does something like 5 into factorial_recursive 4, which becomes 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. So the recursion keeps unfolding until it is fully calculated. Now let us look at the input and flow logic. Coming to the main part of the program, we run everything inside a loop so that the user can calculate again if they want. First, we take the user input, which is a positive integer, and we check if the input is valid. Is it a number or is it a non-negative? Then we ask the user to choose, do you want the loop or do you want the recursion method? And based on their choice, if they choose 1, we call the loop function, and if they choose 2, we call the recursive function. And if the choice is wrong, we give a warning. After showing the result, we ask, do you want to calculate another factorial? And if they say yes, the loop continues. If not, we exit and thank them. The logic behind error handling. We have a try except block around everything. That way, if the user enters something that breaks the program, it won't crash. Instead, it shows a friendly error message. Now, let's see how to get the input. So you have to click on the terminal and then click on a new terminal and choose the folder in which you placed your current file. Now you have to type python factorial.py. Now it asks you to enter a positive integer. Let's type 5, and then it asks you to choose the method. Let's type 1, which is loop. So it gives us the output. Factorial of 5 using loop is 120. And it again asks us, do you want to calculate another factorial? So if you want to calculate another factorial, just type y or yes. And then it asks you to enter a positive integer again. Let's type 7 and choose method, recursion 2. And it gives us the output, which is factorial of 7 using recursion is 5040. Do you want to calculate another factorial? Let's give no, and that's it. Thank you, program exited. So this is how we build a factorial finder using both loop and recursion in Python. Hope you followed along, and thank you for watching.